succubi.
Fucking and killing is kind of what I do. Do you honestly think we would just let that happen?
Oh, honey.
We are talking Lillith. This one is directed and co-written by Lee Esposito and stars Nell Kessler and Savannah Whitten as Lillith herself. And this is a horror comedy that reminded me in some ways of the classic TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So what we have is a girl who has been wronged by her boyfriend. She catches him red-handed cheating and is crushed by it. So she turns to her friend who knows a little bit about kind of Wiccan magic and things like this, and the friend is kind of desperate to try and kind of help and practice her Wiccan skills by doing a summoning spell to summon a succubus called Lillith, who can get revenge on the men that wronged women and things like this, specifically this particular ex-boyfriend. And so they do. Initially thinking it doesn't work, but of course it does, because this is a movie. And Lillith appears as a kind of sassy teenage girl initially. And what will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So first of all, let's talk about what I liked about Lillith. As I said, this reminds me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It has that sort of that wry kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of humour that Buffy was kind of so famous for. And I've got to say, a lot of that is down to some quite sharply written dialogue here, and some kind of fun performances from the past, particularly Whitten, who plays the character of Lillith, who obviously is having an absolute blast in this role, and is quite a fun character, as she is not overtly menacing necessarily. She kind of seems to be quite friendly in some aspects, and kind of seems like she genuinely wants to be friends with, our main kind of character here. But obviously, when push comes to shove, she likes to kind of kill and torture her male victims. But the actual kind of relationship between Lillith and the kind of this group of our protagonists, so to speak, is quite a fun and interesting one. And again, some quite funny dialogue. I think the movie also tries to subvert expectations to a certain degree, but not kind of do it in a way where it's just like for the sake of it. And kind of it feels kind of quite natural, and there are things here that happen in the movie, and they're relatively small things, which I kind of quite like. I don't want to spoil it for you, but there are certain cliches and tropes that you would see in some movies that happen, and you think, oh, that's kind of, that was one of these things that happens in most movies. But this film goes, we're going to slightly change it, and kind of sometimes goes in a somewhat different direction. I don't want to say realistic necessarily, but just kind of like, I was pleased that it doesn't just kind of tap into the standard cliches that a lot of these kind of films do. That was quite fun. I think the cast do a pretty good job, in actual fact. I think the characters are well liked. That they develop some interesting characters. The acting is good from some I would say. There are a couple which maybe I don't think felt like they could have had a couple more takes on a certain scenes, but the majority of acting was good, and I felt the actors did embody the characters here. And kind of make quite likeable characters who you kind of feel like you get to know, and that's obviously what you want at the end of the day. Yeah, there was a couple of scenes where I think the acting was maybe a little bit wobbly, but I think overall it was pretty good. There's some quite kind of fun practical makeup. Obviously, this movie's a lower budget film, but I feel they do a decent enough job, and there's some quite fun scenes where Lillith is presenting herself as this sexy kind of like red-headed girl, but in reality she's kind of a demon. And then we see some scenes what the victims will see, her as this kind of human-looking girl, but in reality she's there as a demon. And we see sort of scenes with her in her natural look, but obviously the male characters not being able to see it and stuff, but reacting her like she's just a normal looking girl. Well, again, some kind of quite sort of fun elements here. And I feel it kind of, that the movie is, you know, somewhat familiar. You know, you're feeling like you could have seen this thing, this kind of start of thing before, but there's enough here to keep it fresh. So it doesn't feel like it's completely left field, and is going to kind of, like, you know, you'll see things that you're going to expect to see, but it's done in some somewhat refreshing ways that I think it keeps this movie, you know, pretty interesting and engaging. What doesn't work for me, I think the movie does slow down a little bit towards the end of the second act and probably the beginning of the third act, to where it seems to be dragging just a little bit. I just think it kind of just dips in its pacing just a little bit too much in those period of times. I think there's some dodgy editing here and there. Some of the scenes felt like they could have been a little bit sort of tightened up with editing. Some sequences seem to just go on a little bit too long. You feel like the edit should have been a little bit tighter in kind of certain sequences. As I said, the acting I think is generally good, but there are just a few scenes here where I feel like the actors some actors in some scenes seem a little bit less confident. I wouldn't say this necessarily, but overall I like the acting, to be fair. But there are a couple of sequences where, you know, it's not 100% all the time, I would say. It's maybe a little bit kind of light for some people, and the humour is generally pretty good, but there are some things here that, you know, you'll find a little bit, you know, maybe silly at times. And I think there is a character within the movie who I don't think is particularly kind of well written. I'm not going to say who that is, but it's a supporting character. It's not one of the kind of the main characters. One of the characters is massively underwritten, to be honest, and could almost not be there if we're being completely fair to what we're saying here. But nonetheless, I think it's an enjoyable film. It's, you know, it's somewhat kind of a lightweight film in some respects, but it's kind of a fun movie that I think, if you're a fan of, like, say, stuff like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you can probably enjoy, because it kind of has that kind of that team dynamic, the way that kind of like there are a bunch of protagonists kind of band together trying to figure out how to kind of stop this sassy kind of menace. And she's great. I think the girl who plays Lillith, I think, does a good job here and is obviously having an absolute whale of a time. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's a lightweight but kind of enjoyable kind of horror comedy. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to you next time. Bye for now.